The San Francisco African American Chamber of Commerce, who is out of town right now at a national conference, but he will be bringing greetings to you by way of speakerphone to the ambassador. Go ahead, Fred.
Well, thank you, President. Buenos dias, Ambassador.
Buenos días.
Bienvenido a San Francisco y gracias por venir. You give me the opportunity to say my few words in Spanish. Thank you very much. I know my colleagues there are impressed. But what I do want to say briefly is that we are a part of your family, and we feel Cuba is part of our family. And we know that there's a substantial African diaspora, people, organizations, and personnel in your country. And so we're here for you. I'm sorry I'm at the conference of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. This organization, when I was chair, we established a trade mission to Cuba. We set up for 120 showed, and we had to charter our own airplane and take 80, and then we came back and took another 40. So I want you to know that we're here for you, and we certainly welcome you, and I guess on behalf of Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who is chair of the Senate of the House Appropriations Foreign Service Committee, a very important person, I want to say welcome. And also I want to thank Rick Swig for bringing you in. Bienvenido.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And you have prepared an outstanding crowd here. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try to do my best because I'm sure that you have great people here, and I will try to update them about the situation in Cuba. By the way, regards from Barbara Lee. She's a good friend of mine. And she said, when you go there, you say hello to everyone on my behalf. Yeah. And she loves Cuba, and we are trying to bring her there again.
Excellent. Very good. Stop here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
President.
You're welcome, sir. At this particular time, we will have a welcome by Esther Fiance. She's the hostess of this event today, and she's the president of the Caribbean Association for Trade and Culture.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. It's my pleasure to welcome you to San Francisco. As the owner of the Caribbean Basin Import-Export Corporation, as well as the founder of the Caribbean Basin Institute for Education and Culture, we look forward to expanding our relationship with Cuba, and we honor you and welcome you here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll now have the president of the San Francisco African American Chamber of Commerce, Matthew Ajayi, to go ahead and to acknowledge the dignitaries that are in the room.
Madam Ambassador, it's good to have you here in our home, Mikasa, or whatever it is. That's the extent of my Spanish. Forgive me for not pronouncing it correctly. We want to acknowledge all of you for coming. Thank you. And especially some of our special guests, Rodney Fong from the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. Over there, thank you, good friend of ours. We have Carlos Solarzano Cuedra, is the CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, San Francisco. Carlos, welcome.
Spain? From Spain?
No, Nicaragua.
Nicaragua.
And again, we want to welcome all of you. And I want to introduce our hostess, and we should introduce the hostess of the ceremony, our Vice Chair. We go a long way, we fight all the time, but we're good friends. And she has been very good in terms of hosting this event. And we want to introduce her and have her moderate the rest of the show.
Thank you, President Ajayi. Thank you very much for attending this afternoon. We are very honored to have you here, Ambassador Leonie Suarez Rivera, the first woman of Cuba to serve as ambassador to the U.S. and only the second to hold the role in 60 years. During the term of President Obama, diplomatic ties were resumed July 20th of 2015, and it's when they reopened the diplomatic missions. President Obama also visited Cuba in March of 2016, and he was the first sitting president of the United States in almost 90 years. We welcome you
Thank you.
for your comments now.
Thank you. Well, it is a great pleasure for Ernesto, which is a young official from our embassy, a young diplomat who is temporarily here in the U.S. working at the embassy. It is a pleasure for us to be here today, and I want to thank you, the Chamber, for hosting us in this morning. Well, how many of you have traveled to Cuba? Could you raise your hands? Yeah, less than half, we would say.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we have to improve that.
We most definitely do.
100%.
Yeah, we have to improve that. Well, Cuba is a small island, a neighbor of the U.S., a Pacific neighbor, a safe country of people that love to welcome visitors, that will treat you as family when you go there, and a country that is fighting every day for improving our economic and social model in one of the most difficult situations of the world. If we go to the bilateral relation with the U.S., you were talking about President Obama. We had, for the first time in history with Obama, the possibility to sit as equal in a table like this. I mean, not me, but my president, but our people. People from the State Department and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Cuba, from Ministries of Trade and your Trade Department, Health, in a table like this, and we spoke about anything, all topics. There was not a forbidden one, as neighbors that we are. And there were, at that time, some small relaxation in the sanctions that the U.S. has imposed against Cuba. It is important to say that Cuba has the most comprehensive sanctions and all sanction system against any country in the world. It touches every single area of our lives. We were both born under the sanctions that we call it blockade. My daughters were born under that regime of sanction, and I hope they won't live their whole life like that. And some people say, but no, but your economy is in bad condition because of the Cuban government. It's not the sanctions. It's not like that. Of course, we are not a perfect country. We have things that we have to improve, and we are working on that. But it could be easier and faster to do it if we don't have the sanctions. Why? And I will put you some examples for you to understand. For example, and I always say this to some American friends, could the U.S. work without banks, without credits, without, being afraid that maybe if we need some medical supplies or food, we have to source in many companies to see which one is not afraid of the sanctions and wants to sell us basic things like food, medicines, or spare parts for the power plants that we have in Cuba that, by the way, are old and need to be replaced. But it's difficult to do it when you cannot buy anything from any country that has more than 10% of US components. These are the sanctions. And it's difficult when we cannot use the dollar, the US dollar, for the financial transaction. Who can work like that? And we said, okay, you said it's an excuse from our government. Remove the excuse and give us 5 years. And after 5 years, you come after our government to see who's going to blame who. So our life would be much more easier without the sanctions. And it would be easier as well if Cuba was not included in the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Not a single serious and decent person in this world think that Cuba is a terrorist state. No, we have been victim of terrorism for many years, but we haven't invade any country. We haven't sent or paid people to make any terrorist act against any country in the world. But we were re-included in the terrorist list of the State Department 9 days before Trump left the White House. It was a political maneuver, but it's still there. And because we are still in that list, no one wants to give Cuba credit. No, there's no bank that want to work with Cuba. Of course, I understand them. They might be fine. And some companies, when they say Cuba, oh no. The State Department or OFAC or Treasury might come after me. So, and we live like that. This is our daily life and daily reality. Maybe you saw in the news that last week we have a major fire in Cuba. It was in the news. Well, the fire took place in the main storage of oil that we have in Cuba, a super tankers base, where we brought oil from other countries, we put them there, and then we distribute it to the country. Half of it is gone because of the fire. So we need now money, we need technology, and we need oil, because the oil that was there is gone. And it's going to be difficult to rebuild those tanks, super tanks, without money and technology, and at the same time we need fast oil. And it's a nightmare for Cuba to buy oil, because the US goes after the company who sells the oil, the one that rent the vessel, the ship, the insurance company, and that is something that came from Trump, for the Trump administration. But this is still in place. So we need, those are, and there are many other things in the sanctions, but those are the most urgent that we need if we want to recover at least from this tragedy that we have. We are still looking for bodies of the firefighters that were in the place. Forensics and people are still working in the area. At that time, there was a whole country with no sleep during 1 week. And fortunately, we have help from Mexico and Venezuela, who had experience and equipment and resources to put out the fire. Otherwise, we will be not talking here, I will be in Cuba Pro. So this is the situation, but at the same time, we won't stop. even with this situation, Cuba will continue improving our economic model. If we do it without the sanctions, would be faster. And of course, it could be better not also for Cubans, but for the US, because you are not allowed to go to Cuba as a tourist. There are certain things that you cannot allow to do because of the sanctions in terms of business and all that. But you cannot read in the news now, in the US media outlets, that Cuba is undergoing a profound process of transformation in our economy in terms of the expansion of the private sector. Is huge and it's important. It's the most important in decades, but also for the state-owned companies and the cooperative. But you cannot read about that in the press. And maybe you read something about the management of COVID in our country, but not so much. We have 5 vaccines that we produce, even under this situation, 100% Cuban vaccines. And we have vaccinated, immunized more than 90% of the population, which is now fully vaccinated and boosted, more than 70% of the population. So, and maybe you haven't read that we are developing a new drug to fight mild and moderate Alzheimer's disease that has been proven to be effective to slow the disease and to recover some abilities of the patients. Is going for phase 3 of clinical trial, but the results in the first 2 phases has been promising. We have other drugs from our biotech industry that might be interesting for you. And we have, as I said, a new private sector, cooperative and state-owned companies that wants to have partners. From the US, perfect. From your chamber, perfect. And they are eager to have a conversation with you. For example, on our way here, we received 2 letters from the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Cuba. And one is for your chamber, and the other one is for the
Latin American Trade Association.
Yeah, because they want to have a video conference with you, and maybe if you're interested, they might be happy to welcome you in Havana, because we have every year an international fair. It's in November, middle of November this year, and there you will find people from all over the world, even from the US. Because you are allowed, even under the sanctions, there are 12 categories under which you can travel to Cuba, and events is one of them. So it could be important if you can go there, you see with your own eyes what is happening, what we are doing. We are also doing a good job, I think, a great job in low-income neighborhoods. I live in one of them, in the outskirts of Havana, very near. And the job that has been done there is amazing, and it could be good for you to go and see what is happening. That is very far from what you read in the news. And as I said, we are not perfect. We are far from being perfect, but we are working. And we want to work with people, we want to have better relation with the US, and the only thing that we ask is respect. Only that. With that on the table, we can talk about anything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
know, we had some of our attendees today submit some questions prior to your arrival, and they were shared with you by Rick. And I wanted to open up the floor with the first question from our president of the chamber, Matthew, and then I'll just go and facilitate the questions that were asked earlier. Okay.
Thank you, Bridget. Madam Ambassador, you've told us a lot of things that we've known all along, that the embargo, and this is political, the embargo has not been justified. But Cuba has had this history, especially in the medical side, of being able to create a system where you produce a lot of doctors that went all over the world helping people. I believe that economically, as a chamber, we want to know why you have not been able to develop the same level of success and good system of producing doctors that you send to all over the world to work on, in different fields. But on the business side, I know there was restrictions, there have been all that stuff, but why is it that you've not been able to, your government has not been able to emphasize the socio-economic aspect of your economy?
Well, that's a good question that we have. Even Cuban we have. Well, as I said, it's difficult to develop when you have so many obstacles in your way. I mean, being most of you or many of you business people, you go to banks and you ask for credit and you develop your business. You don't have limitation. If you want to buy something from Thailand, or if you need, let's say you need planes, we cannot buy planes. We cannot buy many cars, even medical equipment. For example, I give you an example. We have a comprehensive plan to develop internet in Cuba and TICs in general. And I was ambassador to Vietnam, and there we received delegation that wanted to buy equipment and for that purpose, and it was difficult because when they were going to buy, it has more than 10% of your U.S. component they cannot buy. And that goes to every single situation in the economy. For example, when it comes to health, you were talking about health. By the way, we have graduated in Cuba. We have a Latin American School of Medicine in Cuba, where we graduated for free from physicians from all over the world, mainly from Africa, Asia, Latin America, and from the US. We have graduated 209 young physicians in Cuba from the US for free. Most of them Afro-Americans. 48% of them, of the 200, are Afro-Americans. And we have tried that they come from underserved communities, and that they go back once that they are graduated to those communities to serve them. And as I said, we want to develop internet, but then we have these obstacles. For example, our power plant has a lot of problems. Now we are going under blackouts in Cuba for several hours every day. Why? Where are we going to buy those plants? Okay, we go to Germany, for example. How much of U.S. component those plants have? Can we buy them, even if we have the money? No. How to do it? And maybe you could say, okay, but there are things that maybe you could do better. It's true. It's true. Always in human life, there's always things that you can do better, especially in the economy. But you need money for that, you need resources. We are not a country that have gold or diamond or oil. Well, probably we have, but under the sea, which requires a lot of money to explore and develop and all that. So, I mean, we are a country of limited resources, but it's difficult. It's difficult. And during the 2 years, the very small window that we had with Obama, the economy was different. For example, our economy relies on tourism a lot because we are an island. And one thing that we have is beaches and a beautiful island to enjoy, as many countries in the Caribbean. At that time, you have cruise ships going to Cuba. You have many Americans going there. And then you have private restaurants, old cars owners, tourist guide, and then you have the one that produce the food for the restaurant, the one that produce things for the Airbnb, the musicians who have functions with the U.S. counterparts, and all the, you know better than me, that all this generate economic dynamic and change that develop the economy, and that happened. And the situation was different. If we could have that wider than this that we have, you will see. But I tell you, under the current sanctions, it's tough to do it. Tough.
Thank you. The first question will be coming from, it was submitted by Edwin Lombard, and he's the president of ELM Strategies. You can raise your hand for me, Edwin. And one of the questions that he did ask is, are there any restrictions on international commerce with Cuba? And then what are some of the benefits to trade with Cuba?
Well, to trade with Cuba, you have a lot of restrictions. Yeah, a lot. If you are interested, we can connect you with some lawyers in New York that deal with that. And they have been doing it for decades. But certainly there's a lot of restriction. For example, Trump did many things against Cuba. And one of them is that he created two lists, one for the Cuban restricted entities list, where you can find most of the state-owned companies. And then the second was for hotels, for accommodations in general, even private houses that used to work with Airbnb, as Airbnb. So it's difficult to do it, but there's a window in you do it with private companies, and if other than that, you could apply for a specific license with Treasury and Commerce, and depending on the business, they might do it or not. We are open. We are open, and we welcome everyone in Cuba. But it doesn't depend on us.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Bridget.
And sorry, one thing important that I forgot. We can import, we are allowed to import food from Cuba. We have been doing it since the 2001, but the conditions in which this is done, you cannot call it trade, because we have to pay in cash in advance, and the vessels, the ships, they go full from here to Cuba, loaded, but they cannot bring things from Cuba.
So, for
This is not trade.
sorry. For the sake of time, we're gonna, if you can hold another question for me. The next question is gonna come from a San Francisco African American Chamber member. His name is Kiba Kote, and he's with Red Bay Coffee. Kiba, what are the regulations for exporting aquaculture products to the U.S.? Coffee would be the example.
Well, coffee, there were some products that were allowed during the Obama administration that are still allowed. Honey was one of them. ¿Cómo se llama el? Honey, bamboo. How do you say bamboo in Spanish? Bamboo. Bamboo. Coffee, I don't remember. Probably, but I don't remember. I don't think that we are exporting coffee now. But if you are interested, we could find out.
Okay,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
And is it also possible to export from individual farmers?
In Cuba? Yes, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
We are, in fact, our private people are exporting to Canada, Great Britain, Europe, but not here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question comes from movie director Kevin Epps. Kevin, raise your hand. He's actually a movie director and journalist here out of Baby Hunters Point from San Francisco, and his resume was also attached. His question is, do you have young journalists who can write and tell their stories and can be submitted to the San Francisco Bayview National newspaper? And this would be a great pathway for us to connect. And he elaborates on how maybe some of the journalists could also get paid for their stories and articles.
We can do that. We can organize that. If you have a car, to me, give it to Ernesto, to me, and we can do it. Yeah. But for the cultural sector, you have the guy there, the back, Rick.
Oh, yeah.
He knows everyone in Cuba more than me.
And we have a question, Editor-in-Chief for San Francisco News Feed, Jose. Please raise your hand. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the conservative right warned that medical and biotechnology information could not be safely developed with Latin America and specifically with Cuba. With Northern California called Biotech Alley, could biotechnology and medical advances be shared and developed?
We want that. We want that. And we share our knowledge, even our vaccines, with countries, some countries that ask for that. And we send, as you were explaining, doctors, of course, upon request of the specific countries, to fight the pandemic. And we are ready to do that. We believe that the only way to fight the pandemic, but not this one, any situation like COVID, is sharing information, sharing ideas of how to do it. I was having a meeting before, and I was explaining that my daughter, she studied medicine. She's on the third year now. And in Cuba, you know what we did during the pandemic? The medicine students, they went house by house in their neighborhood every day in the morning to ask. They didn't get inside the houses because I asked my daughter every day, did you go inside the house? No, Mom, be quiet. No. From outside. They asked every day, how do you feel? Do you have someone with symptoms? Because that serves the Cuban health system as alert to track people with the disease. And they were so thankful in the neighborhood that they have their own students of medicine. They call it doctor. They're not doctors. But that comes every day to ask you how do you feel, do you have fever, coughing, and After that, they go to the family doctor, that each Cuban have a family doctor. We have one every 120 families. And if my daughter saw someone that has symptoms, she will go and she will report to the family doctor. And later on, the family doctor will go to that house to treat the patient, to see what happened, and all that. And that was one important task for us to fight the pandemic. We did many things, but that one was one of them. The vaccines, we also produced some of the medicines that we used to treat the Cuban patients who were affected by more severe symptoms of the disease. And we even distribute some sublingual homeopathic drops to help especially the elderly people, but the whole population for that. And we have some research in Cuba about how the pandemic has affected the human body in different ways and all that we could share with the U.S. if the U.S. wants.
Thank you. The next question covers the Black experience from Jeanette Fisher-Coudreau. The Black experience literally censors and the oppression of women in the form of controlling reproductive rights have been highlighted. How do you think Cuba can lead by example and implement internal action and change targeting its own Black population?
Well, in Cuba, well, the health system is for everyone. I mean, it's equal for everyone. We don't separate, we don't distinguish if you are black or yellow. Or in Cuba we have four. In Cuba we have from very white people. My hair is not this one. My hair is curly. It's straight down. So in Cuba you have four. You have blonde and very black and everything in the middle. And in our families, we have like that. It's not that you are pure, everyone has, because we come from Spaniards and Africans. So you cannot say that you don't have an African in your family. That's not true. Everyone has one. And the health system is for everyone, equal. We don't distinguish, we don't separate, we don't discriminate. When you have a problem, you go. They won't let you down because you're black or you're white or you don't have money. It's the same. And it's free and universal for everyone. And talking about the reproductive rights, black woman has the same access to everything related to pregnancy that white women have. And it's not related to reproductive right, but in a sense it is. We have in Cuba, in the neighborhoods, a program that every doctor follows that is to avoid the ovary cancer. And they go, the doctor and the nurse of the family, they go every house by house, asking women to perform this test every year to detect any of the cancer.
Papa Nicolau.
¿Eh?
Papa Nicolau.
No, es la
Para
prueba.
el cáncer, para prevenir el cáncer ovariano, ¿no?
Sí, sí. Cytology, we could say, the cytology test, prueba citológica.
It's a ecology test, but it's more like similar to the Papa Nicolau detection type,
Yeah.
except this is for ovarian cancer.
Yeah, well, if you forget to do it, they will go to your house. Ask, please go and perform the test to avoid this. And they don't see if you are black or white. It's all the same. You have to, I mean, they look after the doctor and the nurses they look after everyone, despite their skin color.
Thank you for that. Our next question would be from Ronald Baptiste. He is the managing member of EUO Environmental Construction. And his question is, what type of infrastructure and housing design build projects are available in Cuba?
Well, we certainly need to renovate our houses. And in the way in we construct it is not the same as here. You use more wood, and we still rely on bricks, if that's the question, and which requires a lot of resources, of course. But that's the way we do it, because we have every year storms, very severe, that I always, when I go here in the US around and I see the way you construct, I say, if we do that in Cuba, we don't have a single house. When a storm, like in Asia, in Asia people have typhoons. In Cuba we call it cyclones, storms. And so we have to build in a different way that you do it here. But we have industries there to produce cement. We do it there, we do the bricks, we produce the bricks. But any investment in that industry, in the construction industry, will be more than welcome.
Thank you. I do have a question from a principal consultant who's not here, but he's friends with Congresswoman Lee. His question is, his name is Kevin Nichols. When will the U.S. resume the Obama-era travel-related relationship that was held in the past?
Well, we have to ask that to the White House.
It's a White House question.
Yeah. And I hope it will be sooner than later, for the good of the U.S. people and the Cuban people. We are neighbors, and if you watch Cuban television, for those who have been in Cuba, you see there a lot of shows that you see here in your television, and a lot of movies every day. So people in Cuba, they are very updated about what is happening here, and because we are neighbors. And we have a common border, south border, not a land, a sea border. And by the way, we should be cooperating on that, on law enforcement. And we did it with Obama. Because we have drug traffickers, smuggling, and all that. And we are not doing it.
The next question comes from a San Francisco African American Chamber Board member, Kenneth W. Johnson, who's also behind the camera. What can we sell here in America that we can import from Cuba?
That we can?
That we can import from Cuba?
Biotech, medicines, for example. We are an economy of services that we were talking. For example, with Obama, we sent some doctors to Chicago to share with the health department there the program that we have to help the pregnancy of Cuban women, which is very meticulous and so services in general. Biotech, in the health sector, we could be collaborating. We have coffee. Well, the coffee person is not. Yeah. We have coffee, we have honey, we have tobacco, we have rum that we could export to the U.S. But for example, in the software industry, we are also developed. We could be cooperating with the U.S. In culture, we have a lot. Don't you agree? Yeah.
One of the loopholes in the trade embargo is for culture. So as many paintings, books, music that you want, you can bring that from Cuba, and it's allowed. Also, if you don't mind, there is a new website, I believe, that is starting to sell Cuban, that's authorized by the U.S., that is starting to sell Cuban goods from private Cuban businesses. It just started, so I'm very unfamiliar. I've seen a
You know
photo-
more than me.
All right, there is one, and somebody just sent it to me.
Okay.
Could you send it to us,
Yeah,
we can distribute it?
And the goal is that Cuban small business can be able to sell their goods to people in the United States legally.
So we'll get that information from you.
Go there.
Okay.
Go there, go to the international fair and see with your own eyes what the opportunities you have there and what you might do.
So we have a hard stop at 2 o'clock. I have 2 more questions that I'm going to ask. I know that there's a young lady, but her name is Sarah. She traveled up from San Diego to be here. And one question, please. I wasn't able to get it. But she is with the American Products Project Manager. You'll have one question. And then we'll close with the last question from Reverend Amos Brown. The ambassador needs to be in her car at 2 o'clock, so please be respectful of that. Esther?
Esther?
Are you Esther?
No, I'm Sarah.
Yes, oh, Sarah, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Yeah.
please. Yes.
Not her biblical name.
Oh, Sarah, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I did have a question. So with American Products, we are a trade company. So we pretty much import, export agriculture stuff into Africa. That's where we started. And other countries in East Africa. Do you think it's possible for that Cuba will be able to export if we could work with the Cubans, we can export it to different countries in Africa, what we're doing right now.
You mean to export from Cuba to Africa?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's far for us, but you have to go and see.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to go and see. We are exporting so far to Europe. You are talking about ag products to Europe and to Canada. I haven't heard that we are exporting to Africa agricultural product, but should be. The challenge is the conservation there because it's far.
So the last question before our closing remarks would be from Reverend Amos Brown.
I have no questions, I just came by to say hello.
Okay.
And I'm supportive of
All right, thank you, sir. And thank you.
Africans and African Americans getting their fair share of this earth's goods, and Africa not be continuously exploited. I just got back from Ghana, and it concerns me that that motherland, the indigenous blacks are not manufacturing goods that could be for the benefit of Africa. And that's one thing that those of us who are marginalized and oppressed should be conscious of, that there is a common enemy that says because our skin is black, we deserve being exploited. But the good book that I read says the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. And if the earth belongs to the Lord, we ought to share it, and not permit anyone or anything to hog the show. That's the problem we got to deal with. Is stop greedy people, taking away from the needy, and especially exploiting Africa with all of the wealth and good that is in that country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So in closing, if you have anything that you would need to give to the ambassador, please give it to Latasha Gonzalez here. She has to be in her car exactly at 2:00 p.m., so please be respectful of that. Thank you for attending. Yes, Carlos.
I just want to say, de parte de la Cámara de Comercio Hispana de San Francisco, bienvenida, gracias. Como siempre hay un poquito de controversia por todos lados, por un lado y otro, pero somos, no somos políticos, sino que simplemente queremos continuar las buenas relaciones. Gracias. Thank you. All I just said is a welcome from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in San Francisco, and we're looking forward to have the opportunity to renew businesses and friendships.
Gracias. Vayan a la Feria Internacional de La Habana.